Grieving a lost loved one can be the most challenging experience that we ever have to go through. We've been conditioned our whole life to fear death or losing a loved one, as this is portrayed in our culture as the ultimate tragedy. But imagine a different perspective. What if death is not an end, but a transition? A journey into familiar existence, uniting with familiar souls in a joyful celebration. Would this change how we perceive the passing of our loved ones? Of course, we will still be sad to not be able to see them again. But what if there was a way to see them again? Would you want to know how? And what if you could do it yourself without the need for a medium? In this video, I'm going to explore these questions, and if you stick around until the end, I'm going to show you the 3 main methods that you can use in order to connect with a loved one that has crossed over to the other side. And these methods is something that you can use already tonight. These methods will not only allow you to talk to your loved ones directly and exchange valuable information, but you will also be able to meet them again, see them, and really feel them again, just like you used to do in the physical. Wouldn't that be amazing? Now, in order to understand how this is even possible in the first place, we need to get a better understanding of what consciousness is, or at least where it is. Is consciousness inside of our brains? That's what mainstream science suggests. And if it is inside of our brains, then logically when we die and our brains stop working, there should be no more consciousness. Well, that's actually what I used to believe many years ago. And then something happened, which I will never forget. When I was in my 20s, I witnessed my grandfather die in lung cancer. And the most memorable thing was his final words to me. He said, "Florentine, you need to stop traveling around and spending more time with your family." At the time, I was traveling the world working on big Hollywood movies. It was great fun, and I didn't stop thinking too much about life and other people. Later that summer, a spiritual friend of mine invited me to visit her in San Francisco. I lived in Sweden at the time. When I arrived, she invited me to see some mediums that she said were really good. I politely rejected her offer, telling her that I don't believe in mediums and I don't feel like spending money on a reading. She wouldn't take no for an answer, and so she insisted, saying that she would actually pay for it. I decided to go just to make her happy. The session started and I find myself sitting there with 4 mediums. 3 of them were students, and to my surprise, they didn't ask me any questions. They didn't even look at me. They were just sitting there meditating and started to tell me things about my past lives and how they affected me in this lifetime. It was interesting, but I was still very skeptical, thinking they probably just made up everything. The session was almost over when one of the students started channeling a spirit. She said, "I'm sensing a spirit who wants to connect with us. It's your grandfather who passed away this summer. He wants to give you a message. He wants to tell you to stop traveling around so much and spend more time with your family." If you remember, those were the exact words that he told me before passing. So I was now faced with an experience that I could no longer explain as a coincidence or in any other logical, physical terms. There is no way that this woman across the globe will know that my grandfather passed away that summer and the exact words he told me in person before passing, because I didn't tell anybody that story. This means that my grandfather still exists somewhere, and that communication from where he is and where we are at here in the physical is possible. This led me to really question what reality is and took me on an interesting journey where I discovered the hidden secrets of our reality and the truth about our spiritual identity. I discovered that consciousness is not in our brain. Instead, our brain is like an antenna that receives consciousness, just like a TV receives TV channels. Fast forward to today, I now live close to my family. I no longer work with Hollywood movies. Instead, I help people expand their consciousness, heal, and connect to their loved ones who have crossed over. I do this work because I find it to be very important for our human evolution. How would your life be if you knew that death was not the end? Or if you knew that you could easily connect with a loved one when needed? How would your life be if you knew that you had a purpose here and that no matter how hard it gets, it's all going to be good in the end? I believe that getting answers to the most fundamental questions about our human existence is not just going to set us free, but it's going to create paradise on earth. I believe it's our birthright to know where we come from, why we are here, and where we are going. But how can we know that death is not the end and we're not just wishful thinking? Has anybody died and come back with information about this?
My name's Tony Sikoria. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. Behind me, there was a big lake, and a huge storm cloud had come up over the lake, and I didn't see it. and his big flash of light came out of the phone and hit me in the face and just threw me back like a rag doll. And as I was going backwards, I had the strange sensation of moving forwards. And then all of a sudden I hear my mother-in-law, who's up on the floor above me, and she's screaming and she's coming down the stairs, running right at me. And I'm thinking, okay, this can't be good. As she got down close to me, I could see that she wasn't looking at me. She was looking off to the left. And at this point, I take 3 steps and I'm going in her direction. And all of a sudden, I'm confronted with myself on the ground. And I was like, oh shit, I'm dead.
And so it's just going from bad to worse. And Don's like, if you don't do something, she's going to die. You need to intubate her. They said, oh no, we've got plenty of time. And it was immediately after that I just quit breathing. And it's funny because I popped out of my body so I could see what was going on. And so I'm kind of watching and I'm thinking, man, who is that girl? She's pretty sick. I was so depersonalized. I didn't realize that was me.
And it didn't take but a moment. And all of a sudden I was somewhere else.
I found myself flying through this star-filled realm.
And I became very aware that my 5 senses really did not apply to this place. I say I was seeing these lights, but I really wasn't seeing it with my eyes. In fact, at some point, the lights were so bright and beautiful.
It's just a white field, very bright, but it's not bright like your eyes hurt to look at it. It's just light and bright.
If I was a Christian, I would call the light Jesus. If I was a Buddhist, I would call the light Buddha. If I was a Hindu, it would be Krishna. Whatever it was, the light becomes what we believe, what we associate with.
Upon arrival to this place, it had an unmistaken familiarity. It was home. In fact, it was all of our homes. In fact, it was the place from where we had all originated.
It's not what people say, it's how they make you feel. And that's what I felt up there is what made it so special.
I never experienced that kind of love in my lifetime. Pure, unconditional love. And it was warm, it was welcoming. All my worries, all my fears, all my stress were gone.
There are millions of reports from all over the world of people having these so-called near-death experiences. But are these just hallucinations or people's imagination playing out in front of them? If they were, then we should hear a lot of differences and inconsistencies in people's stories, because everyone is different and has different culture and different religious backgrounds. Yet what we find is that everyone speaks about the exact same things.
So the near-death experience occurs around a brush with death. So somebody suffers a heart attack or has a medical procedure that doesn't go well, or an accident of some type where they feel like they leave their body. And the main characteristics of an NDE, as they call it, are the out-of-body experience, the moving away from your body towards a light, seeing heavenly realms. Often you see deceased relatives, and a life review is also another feature, all associated with this, generally a very pleasant experience. Talk about sublime feelings that are associated with it, and some of the after effects are a sense that their self, there is an aspect of their self that continues beyond even death.
You recognize this full of their awareness. Once they're about to cross over, they just recognize that they're more than their bodies, and they have awareness beyond their bodies. Many times, people, once they're in the light, they may experience a life review. They may be aware of their own spirit guides, angels. They may be aware of the heavenly dimensions, and on the other side, there's different dimensions. For me, I really enter more that light realm. But sometimes when people enter the other side, they have beautiful landscapes that they may see that are just beyond descriptive words, or colors, or sounds, or sights. So their senses open up beyond the physical reality. Family members, soul family members, like I said, angels around them, and just they may have aware of their own purpose, like why they're here, what their life is about, remembering their own unique divine purpose. And the biggest common denominator is love that I find with near-death experiences, where people experience, God, a divine or source, or the energy of the other side is just unconditional love that loves you for your own being and not so much your own doing.
But still, this is so out there, and maybe still just imagination, and it all happens in their brains. Well, if that was true, then these experiences should not be possible with people who are temporarily brain dead.
Reason my story is so important to the scientific community is because it completely violates all the tenets of modern neuroscience and its mistaken notions of the brain creating consciousness. And that's where I think my story has the most value. Because really the disease I had, a severe case of gram-negative bacterial meningoencephalitis, is a perfect model for human death. because of its selective destruction of the neocortex, the outer surface of the brain and the brainstem. And that's why to have the experience I had is so remarkable. And in fact, there's a medical case report on my medical records by 3 doctors not involved in my care, but fascinated by my recovery. That's in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Diseases in September 2018. And they make 2 very powerful points to just confirm what I did in Proof of Heaven. One is they strengthen my argument that my brain could not have had any kind of dream or hallucination, much less the most profound experience of my entire lifetime. And how did that happen? Especially at a time when my brain was demonstrably most offline.
And perhaps another case that's even more mind-blowing is Pam Reynolds' case.
A stunning array of scientific instruments and measurements were in place at the very moment of Pam Reynolds' death. The results were astonishing. At age 35, Pam was diagnosed with a life-threatening brain aneurysm. Her only hope was a very unusual operation. In order to fix the problem and to save her life, doctors would have to drain the blood out of Pam Reynolds' head. What's more, her body temperature would be lowered to 60 degrees. Her heartbeat and breathing would stop completely, and her brain waves would be flattened. Doctors who perform this intense procedure have nicknamed it standstill, because for all intents and purposes, Pam Reynolds would be dead. But what happened was so thoroughly unique and unexpected, Dr. Michael Sabin, a cardiologist and the author of Light and Death, made an extensive evaluation of the Pam Reynolds experience.
The process of death, scientifically, now is known to be a process and not a point in time. It starts with normal waking reality and ends up in irreversible death. During this process, the body dies at different rates. The problem we have as scientists and physicians is to determine when the brain is actually dead, i.e. when the person is actually dead.
In the case of Pam Reynolds, one of the surgeon's main concerns was seizure activity, which could prove deadly during such a delicate procedure. To guard against this and other complications, Pam's brain and body were extensively instrumented and monitored, which makes what happened next even more intriguing. Pam told the doctors she left her body and became a spectator to what they were doing to her body. Later, she was able to describe people, procedures, and even medical instruments she could not possibly have seen.
At one point, I heard a female voice distinctly say, "We have a problem. Her veins and arteries are too small." It was a female voice, and I believed at the time that it was a cardiologist's voice, and it turned out to be exactly that.
Pam Reynolds had a very deep near-death experience at the time that she had documented no brainwave activity, no brainstem activity, and actually the blood had been physically drained from her head at the time. So this eliminates the possibility that this was a seizure phenomenon, because during her experience, she had no seizure activity on the EEG. In addition, she had plugs in both of her ears, and so she could not have physically heard what was being discussed in the operating room during the surgical procedure, and she could recall the accurate discussions that were going on between the surgeons at the time that she was having her experience.
Remember, every bodily reflex was being monitored. She was in a profoundly inactive state. But Pam Reynolds somehow was able to describe a particular surgical tool in amazing detail. A tool which she would later say looked like an electric toothbrush with a dent in it. She even noticed that the tool had interchangeable blades and that these were kept in something that she said looked like a socket wrench case.
The most provocative evidence for heaven from near-death experiences seems to me to be cases where people come back from near-death experiences and they had information there's no way they could have had if they had just had a physical experience while on an operating table. For example, some people come back and they're able to recount conversations that their relatives have had 5 blocks away from the hospital. In other occasions, people have actually had experiences of objects on the hospital roof or somewhere else, where when people go to investigate whether those experiences were real, they see the objects just as the people saw them. In other occasions, people have met dead relatives that died about the same time the person died in the near-death experience. And they came back and reported the death of a relative that no one there in the operating room knew about. Now, this provides pretty strong evidence that something more is going on than just a lack of oxygen to the brain.
So, if consciousness is not in our brain, and we are leaving our bodies when we die here in the physical, where do we go?
Every person will experience their transition or their death in a different way. We can learn from near-death experiences. People they go through a tunnel, or there are various other ways. They first may actually see that they have left their body. They can still see their physical body. Or they may go straight into a copy of the physical world. and wonder where they are. Very often the world is very much the same, but after a while they will probably realize there are slight differences with the physical world. On other occasions, they may actually find they are greeted by people who have died before, like their grandparents, parents, and they may introduce them into their new reality.
Jürgen Sieve is the author of many mind-blowing books about the afterlife. He is a so-called out-of-body explorer or astral projector. An astral projector is someone that is able to get into an altered state of consciousness and project their awareness out of their bodies into the spirit realms. Yeah, just like Doctor Strange in Marvel movies.
I found out about the afterlife via my out-of-body experiences. And I had a lot of those over the last 50 years. Maybe I spent hundreds of hours in these alternate states, in these out-of-body states, and I was able to connect with my relatives who died, my uncle, my mother, my grandmother, my aunt, all the people who died.
When I started my spiritual journey with astral projection, I would read Jürgen's book, The Multidimensional Man, on my way to work. This book was so fascinating, so interesting, that I often got stuck reading it and missing my train stops. In his book, he details many interesting meetings with his mother who had passed away.
When I met my mother, I had an out-of-body experience. So I was walking along the street and then I came to a beautiful garden. And as I was thinking of my mother, she was actually in the garden opposite beautiful bed of flowers. It was like a park, and she sat on a bench. And when I walked towards her, she got up and she hugged me. And that was a really beautiful moment because I instantly recognized it was a hug of my mother. And I could feel her, and she was laughing and very joyful. And for the first time in my life, I connected with her after she died, and that was a really profound experience. And from then on, I knew I could connect to my mother during out-of-body experiences, which I did throughout the last 50 years. I kept connecting to her and we met up, and it was just absolutely beautiful. In fact, because I lived in England and she lived in Germany, sometimes I saw more of her than when she was still alive. And the experience was so real and so valuable that it was absolutely phenomenal. To me, that was proof that there is no such thing as death, because we can still connect to the people we have lost. And that was the most beautiful revelation I ever had in my life.
Jürgen is not the only one who's had these type of experiences. A lot of people meet their loved ones through out-of-body experiences. It's quite a common thing. And over 10 to 25% of the population have had at some point an out-of-body experience in their life. But it usually just happens out of the blue without any conscious control. The fact that so many people have these experiences points to that these experiences are completely natural and happens to a lot of us. And the reason they don't have any control over it is because they haven't practiced it. If you're able to practice this, you can actually have controlled out-of-body experiences, where you can meet with your loved ones or travel anywhere within time and space. And these experiences aren't a dream or imagination. There are authentic, real experiences.
Conscious out-of-body experiences are not imagination or dreams. Most of my out-of-body experiences, I feel myself leaving my physical body. This is something that I don't encounter with dreams. This is something that I never experience with my own imagination. I actually sometimes feel myself peel away from my body like I'm peeling away from Velcro. It's a really powerful experience. You experience, this vibrational state where it feels like somebody's shaking your physical body. I've never experienced anything like that in a dream.
Yeah, some people think if you have an out-of-body experience, it's like a dream, or you imagine it. I can tell you the best way to imagine what an out-of-body experience is: to get up out of the chair, open the front door, and walk outside. That is how it feels. It's just as real as your physical life. And there is no doubt about it that there's nothing to do with a dream or with fantasy.
But are these experiences just personal and subjective experiences? Or have people been able to validate them somehow?
These experiences can be validated, especially when you have a shared out-of-body experience and you're able to, report back into the other person and you're describing the same experience. I've had these experiences with friends, family members, my own students. So yeah, there's definitely ways to validate the experience, whether it's information shared from a deceased relative, where you're sharing information that you couldn't possibly know because you've never met that individual and you know no information about their life. I've had that happen, many times throughout the years, and to the point of bringing people to tears, because for them it's validation that their loved ones have survived in their spirit worlds beyond.
So if it's true that we can have this type of out-of-body experiences and travel across the universe and meet with our loved ones, then how is it possible that no one is talking about it? Well, not only are there hundreds of books and videos on these subjects, but you can also read about it on the CIA's website. If you search on Google for the Gateway Project, you can download a declassified PDF document on the government's website describing this phenomenon. The American government has been using this type of tools to spy on other countries since the 1970s, when they started the spying program Project Stargate. Perhaps another reason why people don't talk about this openly is because, let's face it, this stuff is really out there and nobody wants to be judged or called crazy.
We are hardwired for connection. And when we talk about things like this, it's a taboo subject in society. And that usually means rejection. And we're hardwired for connection. And this is why a lot of people keep this close to their chest.
There is definitely enough evidence to support the ability to gather information from sources beyond our minds. And there are multiple ways that we can connect with a loved one. Usually people do it through mediums that are able to download information for their clients. But by far the most powerful way is to have your own astral projection experience, because then you can actually meet them yourself and speak to them and hear them and feel them and really have that conviction that it was really them you were talking to and that the information that came through was 100% real. Our loved ones are often taken away from us in the most unexpected ways, and we are rarely prepared for it. One of our students, Rena Baker, had her fiancé Michael taken away from her in a sudden car crash.
The accident happened early Sunday morning around 12:30 in the city's West Englewood neighborhood. Investigators say the horrific crash occurred when a black Jeep T-boned a vehicle heading eastbound on 74th Street. The driver of the first vehicle struck died.
I was in a very horrible car crash, and my fiance was driving. I survived, but he didn't. And so that was very devastating for me. And so I really, really wanted to connect with him. And so I started in the hospital, I started watching programs that was talking about, astral projection, and they were talking about ghosts. And so I said, oh, it really is a way to connect with my deceased fiance.
Rena Baker came to us soon after, asking us if we can teach her how to connect with Michael. We showed her everything we know about the process, and after a few weeks, she started having out-of-body experiences where she was able to connect with Michael.
There has to be some group, some person that has mastered this that is willing to teach me. So I went on my internet search, and that's how I found you. So I started on the direct method. I'm accelerated in the program, and now I'm on the direct method. So I tried it, and first day, nothing. Second day, nothing. I'm following all the prompts. The fourth time that I tried it, I was able to successfully get out of body, and I had been practicing so much with the semi-indirect method that I was comfortable with getting out of my body, and I was able to get out, and I actually reconnected with Michael.
It's truly incredible to see the happiness and the glow on our students' faces when they have had these profound experiences connecting with their loved one across the veil. Imagine how it would feel like for you to be able to meet your loved ones again and have the opportunity to get that closure that you need to move forward in life, or simply just feel their love again because you miss them so much.
When my father passed away, I remember the morning very clearly when he was ill. He was always up and out of the house before us for work. I remember him lying there on the bed, and our mother pretty much shoved us out the door, sent us off to school, hurried us out the door. And I knew I was not going to see him again when I came home from school that day. And sure enough, when I got home, he was in hospital. He was in hospital for a few weeks. And because of our ages, we weren't allowed into the hospital, into his hospital room. So when he died in hospital a few weeks later, I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. It was another week past that at his funeral when my grieving started to deepen. And I could feel the sense that I was going to meet him and that I would get to have that closure that I didn't get in the physical. And it wasn't soon after that, lying in bed around 4 o'clock in the morning, pitch black in the room. I woke up in sleep paralysis, and there was a figure standing at the end of the bed, and I could sense it was my father. And I then had his voice in my head, and he said, "Son, I'm safe. I'm in a place which is beautiful. And the relief I could feel instantly in that moment, my heart was just, I don't have words for this stuff when I was a child. But as an adult now, I know my heart center was just wide open in that experience. And it was a beautiful moment to be able to say goodbye.
I mean, I could feel every touch. I could feel everything he was doing. I even had, the very first time we made love, I cried. And I had that same experience with him where we just sobbed. And the sensations were probably 10 times what I would experience with my physical body.
And I think the biggest lesson I've learned in communicating with him is believing in love is there's no higher power. There's no higher achievement that you can experience when two people believe in that, and then they find a way to communicate with each other and not question our sanity or not weigh it against someone else's beliefs that this is not possible, because it most certainly is very possible.
So how does it work? And what do you have to do exactly to have an out-of-body experience where you can meet with your loved ones? Well, there are 3 main methods, and all of these methods require that your physical body is asleep while your consciousness is aware. So the first method is the indirect method, and this is the method that you perform in your sleep. So when you're sleeping and you start dreaming, you can actually use dreams in order to transition from that dream into an astral projection. And you might wonder, how am I gonna do this if I can't even remember my dreams? Well, the thing is that you don't remember your dreams because you haven't practiced these techniques. If you practice these techniques, you will be able to remember your dreams. Actually, you'll be quite surprised how many dreams you actually remember once you start this practice. And the cool thing about this method is that if you get really good at it, you could literally do it every single night when you are sleeping. Now, the second method is what I call the semi-indirect method. And this is a method that we perform upon awakening from sleep. So those few seconds that you have when you wake up from sleep, we can perform certain techniques that allows us to project our awareness out of our physical body. Because you're in that perfect state where your body is very relaxed and you are in this dreamy state. This is the perfect opportunity to have an out-of-body experience. And then finally, the third method, which is the direct method. Similar to the other methods, we want to get our physical body to fall asleep while our consciousness is aware. And the way we would do that is by laying down, relaxing, and get ourselves in a very deep meditative state that takes us on the borderline between awake and asleep. Once we reach deep enough that we are in the so-called vibrational state, we can now project our awareness out of our bodies. And this is the moment you've been waiting for. You are now out of body. And I mean, just this experience on its own is profound, because this is the moment you realize that you are not your physical body, that you are so much more. And now in this moment, it's time for you to decide where you want to go and what you want to do. And boy, this is exciting because you have the whole multiverse at your disposal. You can travel anywhere within time and space. Now in your case, what you want to do is to connect with your loved ones. And in order to do this, you simply want to have a very, very firm intention of who you want to see and how that feels. You want to connect with that person in your feelings, in your emotions. You want to feel that person, their essence. Now, this out-of-body state is 100% thought responsive. So whatever you feel and think is going to manifest within seconds. So if you've done all the previous steps correctly, you will now be taken to your loved one. This is so exciting. This is the moment you've been waiting for. This is the moment that you've been practicing for. And here, it's very important that you remain calm. Even though you're excited and emotionally extremely happy and sad and all kinds of feelings at the same time, it's very important to remain calm and emotionally stable. Otherwise, the experience will end prematurely. So you don't want that to happen when you're just about to meet your loved one. You want to make sure to remain calm. If you remain calm, you'll now meet your loved one again, be able to talk to them again, feel them, and reunite with them in a loving, meaningful way. This is a very profound, pivotal moment for many out-of-body explorers that have this experience, because in this moment, not only do you know that your loved ones exist with conviction, but you also know that you yourself will survive this life. And you will know that death is not the end, but just a beginning of a new life. And this will bring you not just peace, but tremendous calmness and beauty in your life. So how easy is it to do this? Can everybody do this? Can you do this? Well, I would say most people can do this, but it depends on your personal situation. So below this video, you can find a quick 30-second test that is designed to check your ability to astral project and give you personal guidance on what you need to work on in order to unlock your abilities with astral projection. You can find the link to this test in the description below. I really hope you get to experience the profound benefits of astral projection.